You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 30th of July, 2026 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio 1 here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's program, the wildfires continue to engulf southern France. Thomas Waterhouse is on the ground there for us. Thomas, what can you tell us?
Chris, we've had a spattering of light rain and some cooler conditions here in the city of Bordeaux this morning, but the temperatures are now climbing back up again, and those Gironde wildfires burning far west from where I am, they still aren't extinguished.
From there, we'll head to Peru, where Keiko Fujimori has been inaugurated. We'll look at how she fits into the cast of presidents and characters reshaping politics in Latin America. We'll speak to the head of the Guggenheim Museum and Foundation about expanding to Abu Dhabi. We'll also bring you an outpost in southwest China in the mountains that's featured in our new summer newspaper. And finally, well, speaking of summer, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, you are bringing us a summery global countdown.
Absolutely, Chris. I'll bring you 5 songs to bring you joy this summer.
All of that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. A very happy Thursday to all of our listeners around the world. We'll start today's show with an update from France, where there has been some progress in fighting wildfires in the southwest. Monocle Radio's senior producer Thomas Waterhouse is on the ground there for us. Thomas, good to have you again from Bordeaux. You mentioned at the top of this show that there has been, well, a little bit of rain. That must have come as welcome relief, but still only temporary too.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me on again. I'm right outside a pharmacy in central Bordeaux, and anyone who's been to France on holiday in the past will be familiar with those kind of big flashing green crosses outside of pharmacies here. And the one where I am on Rue Saint-Cernin is currently telling locals in big green letters that the temperature at the moment is 28 degrees. Now, that's slightly cooler than what we saw here yesterday in this whole Gironde region where I am, which was under an orange heat wave alert yesterday. That's now back in the green heat bracket. So that's clearly going to be helping firefighters to the west of where I am. As I was saying, I did have a really light 5-minute bit of rainfall at around 9 a.m. Local time in Bordeaux. That is maybe a tiny glimmer of hope, but that water that fell, that's clearly not going to be enough to make any real impact when it comes to controlling these fires. And this is still very much, Chris, a region that's very on edge. Life is going on around me as usual, but there's a massive sense of trauma and of exhaustion.
Well, absolutely. And of course, a lot of evacuation orders in different parts of the southwest. How much is this affecting businesses in particular in the area from kind of those you've spoken to? You, as you say, you're outside of a pharmacy right now.
Yeah, it's had a massive impact on the local economy and on businesses. You know, this is one of the most popular regions of France. I think it's the fourth most popular region for French staycationers who want to stay in France and come on holiday. And usually it's a place where surfers come. Lots of French people have holiday homes here. And for that very reason, there are huge amounts of businesses that have been set up to support those holiday makers and those staycationers who come here. So this is a wildfire that's still burning. It's been burning bright for over a week now. And this is a fire that's burning at a really bad time. It's the start of the holiday season when everyone should be coming here, and those tills should really be ringing.
Well, speaking of that, I want to bring into this conversation Marianne Levest, owner of a pizzeria in Arcachon, also a wine bar. I understand, Marianne, that you are near Cap Ferret as well. Bring us a bit of your perspective. Thanks for coming on our show.
Hi, thanks. Actually, our restaurant is on the Cap Ferret Peninsula, and we are currently doing pizza for firefighters every day for free. But it's just an economic drama for us because we are supposed to serve every day hundreds of pizza, ice cream, drinks, and there is literally nobody on the peninsula, Cap Ferret.
Marianne, just give us a little more of a picture of what this would normally be like in Cap Ferret. What kind of guests would you be having? How busy would it be?
This is the peak, the high peak of the season actually, from the last week of July and the first week of August. We do normally 70% of our activity. And it's very weird to see anybody in the street. Usually there is a lot of cars. It's crowded. It's just crowded. We have the restaurant is full, and it's the same for every business here.
And Marianne, have you yourself decided, or tell me why you've decided to stay in this moment? I'm assuming many people have left given what's happening in Cap Ferret. What is it like for you to be there in this moment?
Actually, we did not stay. We left like everybody during the night on Thursday and on Friday. But on Sunday, we were in contact with Lège Cap Ferret, with people working for the Lège Cap Ferret mairie, and because we had a lot of food in our restaurant, we proposed to come back to provide food for free for the firefighter, and they accepted, so we can go back on Cap Ferret, and that's why we are here now.
Well, it is wonderful, Marianne, that you're providing that food for the firefighters. But given what you're describing there, the economic challenges of this, I just wonder if you have thoughts on that, what you can do going forward. It is wonderful that you are helping the rescue workers. Are you presumably hoping that there will be some sort of government support or something else to kind of keep you going through this as well?
Exactly. We are really hoping as well that insurance are going to do something, because now when we call our insurance, they say that if our company didn't burn off, or if the fire is not like less than 100 meters from us, they cannot do anything. But they have to do something.
And that's insurance. Would you also expect some kind of help from the government, from Emmanuel Macron?
Yes, of course we hope. We hope a help, like during the COVID, for example. Actually, they already give help to pay the employee. So it's really good. It's like a part-time activity help that allow to pay the employee, but for the company, we don't have any help at the moment.
Well, Marianne, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some of your perspective. Thomas, if you're still there, a final note from you on this, perhaps particularly on that idea of government support, whether it is for employees, as Marianne is describing there, or what else do we expect from the French government to help in this situation?
Well, Chris, just a quick update from Paris, so to speak. The country's interior minister, that's Laurent Nunez, he's been speaking this morning, and he's revealed to the French nation that their president, Emmanuel Macron, he's been meeting this morning with several other heads of state to discuss how the international community can work more closely together and better coordinate collectively to deal with what clearly, Chris, is looking like a new summertime norm here in Europe. So, we might get some indication from Macron about how that kind of international coordination might look like in the future. But of course, we should remember that we're here in the Gironde. There's already lots of international support. We have planes being donated or given from Belgium and from Turkey in recent days. I think there's help from Switzerland, Croatia. A string of European countries are helping to try and douse and extinguish these flames, which are still burning.
Well, thanks very much for that update. Thomas Waterhouse, Monocle Radio's senior producer. Thanks also to Marianne Levest, owner of a pizzeria on Cap Ferret. Now here's Tom Webb with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. Egypt says that preliminary investigations suggest a drone caused a fire on 2 ships at Damietta port. The Egyptian cabinet said the fire had been brought under control and no party had claimed responsibility for the incident. Any drone attack in Egypt could bring about a serious escalation of the Middle East war. The death toll from the earthquake that struck southwestern Japan on Tuesday has risen to 30. The worst damage was at the Aeon Mall on the town of Kashima, which was crowded with thousands of shoppers when the quake struck in the late afternoon. The US Recording Academy has defended its creation of a new Asian pop category after K-pop supergroup BTS announced it will not compete at the upcoming Grammy Awards in an apparent protest against the move. Harvey Mason, CEO of the Recording Academy, issued a statement expressing sadness over the group's decision while respecting its choice. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Tom. Now, electorates around the world are becoming increasingly polarized. Many of you listeners will be familiar with that dynamic, and Peru is among those countries that has faced it more than most. This week, Peru celebrated its National Day with the inauguration of a new president, Keiko Fujimori, the 9th in about a decade, who won an election in June by a razor-thin 40,000 votes. She is herself a polarizing figure, the daughter of the former president-turned-autocrat Alberto Fujimori, and she now follows in a long list of Latin American governments that have swung to a more conservative nationalist stance in the past year. But can she bring stability to Peru, and how will she fit into that cadre of new characters currently governing Latin America? Well, I'm joined now from Lima by Natalia Sobrevilla Perea, a Peruvian academic, historian, and author of Independence, 200 Years of Struggle for Freedom. Natalia, thanks so much for coming on the show. Can you describe the mood, first of all, where you are as Fujimori is inaugurated?
The country remains divided, so there is a group of people who are very happy and have been waiting for Keiko Fujimori to become president for a long time. This was a razor-thin difference, but it already had been razor-thin in 2016 and in 2021, so this time it went to the other side. But there's also a large group of people, including myself, who are worried in what could happen during her government.
Well, as you alluded to there, I mean, she is a former presidential candidate as well, a 4-time presidential candidate, I understand, a known quantity in Peru, also given her family history for that matter. What was her message at the inauguration to supporters and those who are worried?
It was a short message. It was only 40 minutes long, which is very welcome because her predecessors tended to have very long laundry lists and spend 2 hours promising things that would never really come to fruition. Her message was short and it was sweet, and it was very much about bringing the country together, giving better salaries, providing people with more benefits, conciliatory. Her tone was very conciliatory.
And is that something that will be appreciated then by those who worry about what she is bringing to the table? I mean, how much do you expect her to bring into action a plan that will actually bring the country together?
It turns out that if you listen to these promises that presidents make and during inauguration and every 28th of July, which is our national holiday, if you think about them being put into effect, the country would be in the path of wonders. So we're all kind of weary of the promises. We know they're made, and it's much better than they're made than they have a different, more menacing tone. But this is the moment when you're going to promise candy to everybody. So it's not really surprising. What is more worrying is what has happened in Congress for the election of the Senate presidency. There was 30 votes for one side and 30 for the opposition, and one person either spoiled their vote on purpose or not after. So the Super Senate, where she doesn't have a very large majority, but she's tied, is probably going to swing her way. So she is going to have a possibility to govern. Other worrying aspects are some of her father's former henchmen have already come to deny things like that Fujimori father, Alberto, was corrupt when he in fact testified, declared himself guilty in the corruption charges put forward after his extradition. They have been attacking the Museum of Memory. So they have already started very strongly to speak about the rewriting of history. So she might have been very conciliatory, but people around her are much less so.
And things like that rewriting of history, there are shades of many other leaders currently in the Americas, North and South. Can you put her in that context for us? Where does she sit? How does she compare in style and substance with the rise of, well, many other conservative leaders in Latin America right now?
Well, she's pretty much part of that cohort. She belongs in the same type of ideological foundations as, say, Javier Milei or Espriella in Colombia, Cast in Chile. So there is very much a line there of people who are following this notion of the move to the right should be accompanied with a rewriting or retelling of more recent histories. And we're talking about countries that had strong confrontations, where we have trials, we have truth commissions, we have museums of memory. So she is part of that cohort. But she, of course, has a different relationship with the facts herself, having been the first lady of Peru during her father's time in power.
Well, absolutely. And just to kind of ask that same question in a different way, do you expect these other leaders to actually be allies of hers? Because we have seen, same thing in Europe for that matter, nationalist, more conservative leaders don't necessarily get along with each other. Who do you expect to be her actually closest ally?
Well, Milei was here for the swearing in, and so was Cast. Espriella in Colombia did not come. So at least we know that she is close enough to have the presidents come and not send a representative. The King of Spain was here too. Of course, his is a very ceremonial position and he goes through all these kinds of things. But there is an expectation that there will be a closeness.
An expectation of closeness, does that also count further north up towards North America and Donald Trump?
Well, of course. I mean, Trump has not been very vocal in supporting Fujimori. He probably considers that being a woman and not being what he considers pretty is not of interest. But the American ambassador has been really wielding his power and has been very present, very vocal, establishing the might of the United States and their presence. And of course, you have to remember that this is in the context of China being a very strong player in the Peruvian economy.
Absolutely as well. But just finally, Natalia, I mean, there has been so much instability in Peru, polarization, but also just so many different presidents over the last decade. Is there any expectation that Fujimori could bring some measure of stability?
Well, in as much as she was the one who caused the instability in the first place, I mean, she and her Congress people were the ones who effectively ended with Kaczynski's stay in power. So the crisis really can be thought back to the fact that she lost the election of 2016 and she was adamant that she was not going to allow anybody else to govern. And she did exactly the same thing in 2021 with Pedro Castillo. So it was her making. So now when she's in power, we all hope that at least now she will govern in a more stable fashion.
Natalia Sobrevilla-Perea, Peruvian academic, historian, and author. Thank you very much for joining us there on Monocle Radio. You're back with the briefing. The time here in London is 12:18. The Guggenheim Art Museum has already spread its wings from its original location back in the 50s in New York. In recent decades, we've had a first outpost in Venice, then Bilbao in Spain, and later this year, we'll see the opening of Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, its first outpost outside of Europe and North America. Well, joining me now is Mariette Westerman, Director and CEO of the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum and Foundation. Mariette, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Chris.
So tell us, first of all, before we get to Abu Dhabi, about your existing outposts, if you will, and kind of what you use them for.
So the Guggenheim Foundation has always been very entrepreneurial since 1937 when we got started. So our first museum is, of course, the famous museum by Frank Lloyd Wright in New York, and it shows the art of modern and contemporary times from 1871 to the present. It's very international in its orientation. And then we have the Peggy Guggenheim collection, which is also wholly owned by the foundation. It was left to us by the famous and wonderful Peggy Guggenheim when she passed away in 1979. And there, since 1980, in this beautiful little palace on the Grand Canal, we show, again, the modern art in her collection and also the contemporary art, which was largely European and post-war American, and is a wonderful resource for the city and the Guggenheim. And then, since 1997, we have worked together to operate and shape the Guggenheim Bilbao, which opened in that year, in 1997, as a long-term, now 35 years of partnership since 1992, really, between the Basque authorities, so public institutions, and the Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation, which is a private foundation in the public service, to show, again, the art of modernity from all periods of that the last century and especially this century. So both permanent exhibitions and a wonderful collection of especially Spanish and Basque art that the museum has collected over the years. So it's always been the Guggenheim has always been this very entrepreneurial and engaging institution that exists to bring art to anyone who wants to engage with it. Everyone is welcome at the Guggenheim who comes in peace.
Well, absolutely. And you described there very well the difference between some of the outposts you have, kind of what the collections show. So tell us then about how you came to Abu Dhabi. This has been a project in the works since, I understand, around 2006. What brought you to Abu Dhabi, made you decide that that was the next place to showcase what the Guggenheim has?
It's a wonderful question, and I'll try to answer it acknowledging that I stand on the shoulder of giants, the former directors Tom Krantz and Richard Armstrong, who really have carried this project through over the last 2 decades. And I'm very lucky now to be able to help and work with everyone to bring it over the line. Most importantly, with our partners, the Department of Culture and Tourism in Abu Dhabi. But before I say something about that, I want to say that we do not think at the Guggenheim, as all of our museums, as outposts of each other. We think of the whole as a constellation now of 4 institutions in 4 different countries, 4 different cities, very dynamic cities each, on 3 continents. That is what's the unique value proposition, I think, of the Guggenheim Foundation as an institution of museums for modern and contemporary art. So why Abu Dhabi? And you could also ask, of course, my counterparts in Abu Dhabi, why the Guggenheim? It is that international disposition that both the Guggenheim and the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, the country of the UAE, that we share. And so I think there's a certain natural confluence, an organic confluence between the interests of the Guggenheim Foundation, which I can speak for directly. We want to, and those of Abu Dhabi as a very diverse city that's home, just as New York City is, to people from some 200 countries. It's kind of an amazingly diverse and dynamic place. And what was, of course, so interesting for my predecessors and for the foundation, and is for me, is that Abu Dhabi has invested in culture in the way that in the past, the countries of Europe and the capitals of Europe and, of course, many cities in the United States did. Abu Dhabi has been absolutely resolute about that, especially from the early days of the creation of the country. Already in 1971, they were building local museums of great archaeological and historical importance. What is new in this century is that over the last 22 years, they have been shaping a true national mall of museums, like the one we have in Washington, D.C., a mall with museums of all kinds dedicated to bringing culture, history, art, and natural history to the residents of the country, the Emirati citizens who live there, but also the many, many people, some 9 million people from other countries who live and work there, but also to make that available to the world and show how art, natural history, and culture can be thought of from a regional perspective, the perspective of the Gulf, the perspective of West Asia, which we can think of as one of the real cradles of history and civilization, after all. So it is that opportunity for the Guggenheim to say something new through art, to help the country build a collection of modern contemporary art that is really from all continents. The ability to really live out the Guggenheim's very international and global perspective, which is rather in our DNA or transatlantic DNA. That is, I think, what motivated the board of trustees and the former directors of the Guggenheim to partner with this extraordinarily, visionary and steadfast partner, the Department of Culture and Tourism of Abu Dhabi.
Mariette Westerman, Director and CEO of the Solomon Guggenheim Museum and Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us today. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You're back with The Briefing. Now, if you're looking for some summer plans for this summer or the next one, well, we're going to take you east now to the southwestern Chinese mountain city of Dali, which has been featured in Monocle's Bed Mountains and More newspaper, which is out today. And joining me right here in the studio in London is our Asia editor, James Chambers. James, good to have you back.
Hi, Chris. Great to be here.
So tell us, set the scene, if you will. Tell us about Dali.
I mean, well, the first point to make is obviously our new newspaper is out today.
It is out today. We've been doing a few different things this week, but today is the official day. You are absolutely right to point that out.
And we've both got copies. And it's exciting for us, for the Monocle team in Asia, because this summer it's no longer called the Mediterranean, and it's no longer just focused on the Mediterranean. As you said, it's Med, mountains, and more. The more is, places outside of Europe. So as you said, we've traveled to China for this story, and obviously we've gone up to the mountains as well.
You've covered the mountains and more aspect of the title.
Of course. And because I guess a lot of the focus during the hotter months is, getting to the coast and cooling down by jumping into the water. But also there's a long history of people heading up into the mountains to find some cooler temperatures. And so we kind of set that challenge of let's feature somewhere in Asia where people like to go during this time of year when it's, 35 degrees in Shanghai or, it's always 35 degrees in Bangkok, to find places to cool down. And, the first place that came to mind was Dali. And that's a beautiful city in Yunnan province. It's around 2,000 meters above sea level, so it's about as high as you can go without starting to, get a bit woozy and need oxygen with the altitude sickness. And it's just a very, very popular place to go in China if you're a bit sick of the big cities and just want to, have a bit of a quieter, more relaxed, more laid-back lifestyle.
And tell us how it's laid into that reputation that it has, I guess, at this point, the fact that so many Chinese tourists visit. Tell us about the hospitality, what you've seen there, what's developed there.
So it's one of those places that I guess I was just hearing more and more about from people who had been there to visit, loved it so much that they'd either bought a second home or were trying to, spend more time there. And these tends to be people, entrepreneurs who'd started some kind of business, whether it's in fashion or design or architecture. So they'd made a bit of money, and they're like, actually, I want to use that money now and enjoy myself. And it turned out like 8 and 10 of them would move to Dali. So you've got all these kind of cool people who've moved from Chongqing or moved from Shanghai. They get to Dali and they can't just put their feet up. They want to do something. And so they end up, designing their own, hotels or restaurants. And so this is, it's not just a laid back place, but it's got plenty of cool people who've created some lovely places to stay. And so in this story in our newspaper, we're featuring a bunch of these people, such as one of these kind of prominent Chinese architects called Xie Ke, who's from Chongqing. And he moved or checked out Dali 20 years ago and has been trying to spend more and more time there. And he has built a number of hotels and places where you can stay in Dali. But our writer, Joseph Koh, who went from Singapore to report this story, I mean, he went and spent time with Xie Ke. He went to his house, and so we managed to go inside and just see his beautiful home, which is obviously he's designed himself. And so Joseph has done an amazing job of just reporting from there and reporting this trend of, that we're seeing across China of people who now do want to spend a bit more time enjoying themselves and a bit less time doing the kind of, the hardcore, intense, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week kind of work that China has become a bit more famous for.
Well, absolutely. And just finally, James, on this, I mean, when you look at what has been developed there, the kind of places we profile in this newspaper piece from Joseph, how does China look at that balance between modernity and history? Because I am curious, it's an ancient city that we're talking about with Dali. So how do they maintain some of the reason for its allure in the first place as they build out new hotels and everything else?
Yeah, that's right. China is very famous for destroying a lot of its history during the Cultural Revolution, but there's still, it's a very big country. There's still a lot to see. And there is this wave of a kind of newfound respect for the thousands of years of heritage, and designers like Xie Ke are very much at the forefront of that. And it's kind of funny when some people see these photos of Dali and their first thought is, oh, that must be somewhere in Japan, because Japan is much more famous for this kind of style. But a lot of it did originate in China. And we're seeing a lot more kind of respect and interest in discovering that amongst Chinese, traveling from the East Coast. But China is going through a huge wave of international tourism because, I mean, the government seems to have cottoned on to the fact that if you make it a bit easier to visit by, giving foreigners the chance to come without having to go to the embassy and get these laborious visas, then they will come, and there is a lot of interest. So there's loads of people flying in from Europe and from around Asia. I mean, Thai people seem to be obsessed with traveling to China right now. So the government might be struggling to get Chinese to spend a bit more at home, but we are seeing a lot more interest from international tourists, and hopefully our readers, once they've picked up this newspaper, will head over to Dali to check it out for themselves.
Well, exactly. Add Dali to your list. Our Asia editor, James Chambers, thank you so much for joining us today. Monocle's Med, Mountains and More newspaper is out today. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Well, finally on today's show, it is Thursday, and we would not leave you without a global countdown with Fernando Augusto Pacheco, Monocle's senior correspondent. Fernando, good to have you.
Good to be here in this beautiful, epic show.
Beautiful, epic show, and we have now officially moved on from our World Cup coverage, which has been going for the last many weeks here on Monocle Radio, to a different kind of special.
It's a very simple special. It's basically 5 songs to bring you joy this summer. Of course, if you go to monocle.com, I've created a special lineup of 40 songs to enjoy in the season with a drink in your hand. But for the listeners of the Global Countdown, I'm offering 5 more.
5 more in addition to the 40
in addition,
that are on the
of
website.
course.
You are so generous, Fernando.
Yes, I didn't want to repeat myself here. But if I may, Chris, the first one, of course I would have to pick her because genuinely I think it's her best album in the last 20 years. Madonna is back this summer. I mean, she's never went away, let's be really honest here. But Confessions 2 is a brilliant album, and she's inviting us to the dance floor. And I've picked one song from that album, which I think is my favorite. Let's have a listen to Madonna's Danceteria. Everyone here is a work of art. Great lyrics as well. Great lyrics.
Fernando, I do believe when we've done our summer playlists before, specials, we've kind of grouped them into themes. So I'm guessing that is the dance hit of the summer for you to get moving on.
It is the dance hit. And, I think summer is the season to dance. So there will be more dance music here in this lineup that I've picked.
Okay, we have lots of dance music coming up. Well, you had to put Madonna in there, of course, with her new album. What do we have next?
We're heading to Belgium, and Belgium is having a great year with pop music. Of course, earlier in the year, I spoke to the wonderful Angèle, and I'm very excited. There will be a new album out this autumn. We still don't know the official date, but there's another Belgian pop star that I'm a big fan. And to be fair, we played this song already on Monocle Radio. It is a 25-year-old, and he also has a new album out on the 25th of September. So people should keep an eye on that. But this song is wonderful. It's very fluid. I love the beats. It's Pierre de Mer with Je pense à vous.
Je vais, je viens, ça monte et je pense à vous. Je n'ai besoin de rien que de Mexico. Je vais, je viens, ça monte et je pense à vous. La vie, le feu, le sang, je l'aime surtout.
Chris, don't you think the Belgians are rocking it?
They do. They have quite a few tracks and artists at the moment. I do have to smile listening to the French there that the title is Je pense à vous. Vous being like the formal you, which we don't really do in English. But nonetheless, it's quite funny they would use that. It's like saying I think of Mrs. So-and-so.
It's this beautiful formality of vous. Sometimes we do need a vous in this world,
Je pense à vous.
Oui.
What do we have next?
Well, we're talking about lyrics here. The next song, there's no lyrics. And we're back to the dance floor. But this is proper dance floor. It's a Berlin DJ producer. I came across this track very randomly, and that's how I come across my music. And I think that's the beauty of it as well. I think he's great for clubs. It's pulsating, infectious. I love it. It's Mautitz with Kukicha.
Fernando, you're doing some serious dancing here in the studio. There are some amazing head movements that I wish our listeners could see.
It's the power of music, Chris. I lost myself for a bit here, and it might not be to everyone's taste. I mean, some people, I'm sure, they are at work or they're taking care of their kids at the moment, but you know what? Listen to this song. It would take you somewhere. It's a great track.
It'll probably take you to about 1 a.m. on the dance floor. That's kind of when I'm imagining that track gets played.
Take you to the Balearics. There.
Where are we heading to next in our dance-themed summer countdown?
Well, a little bit of nostalgia, and I do say that I come across tracks a bit randomly. Everybody knows Kaoma, Chorando Se Foi. It was a big hit from the French-Brazilian band in the late 80s, early 90s. Lambada everybody was dancing the Lambada in Brazil, in Europe. But I decided to actually go back to Kaoma to their B-side hits.
B-side hits? The B-side of a lambada?
B-side of lambada, of course, which is the genre that Kaoma, the band, plays. And lambada was kind of a music style from the state of Pará in Brazil, in the northeast. But then it was popularized around the world by Kaoma, which had Brazilian members and French producers as well. They were big everywhere. And it's pure summer. Some people might say it's a bit cheesy, but hey, what's the problem with a little bit of cheese, Let's have a listen to Kaoma, Lambamor. And it's great to dance. If you have your partner, you can dance the lambada. It's hard to describe. Arched legs, step side to side, and lots of swaying.
I was going to say, Fernando, this is the theme that is developing of your global countdown. Different types of dance. So we've had sort of the techno late night club. We've had the sort of bit earlier with Madonna. And now we've had the couples dance.
And maybe the next one will be more of an ethereal dance, if I may say. I'm a recent convert to this artist, which, she is also a German DJ and singer. Her name is Horse Girl, and she's known for having literally a horse mask. She says that she's a half human, half horse entity. Forget about the mask for a bit and just listen to the next track because it's beautiful. It might connect you to nature in many ways.
All right, let's put aside the horse.
Horse Girl, Rivers Run Free.
Fernando, this would be dancing by yourself in nature in the woods.
Yes.
If you're out in the mountains somewhere, that's just sort of go for it. Put this on your headphones and just go with the feel. Go with the flow.
Take you on a trance, and absolutely forget about the horse mask. But you know what? And one thing, just before we end, I've been lured by musicians wearing masks recently because it's not just Horse Girl. We have Tulate, the Egyptian musician who covers his face when he sings. We have Orville Peck as well, the country singer from the US. I mean, masks are in.
Masks are having a moment. Fernando Augusto Pacheco, thank you very much for joining us for that summer global countdown. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Tom Webb. Our researcher was Kaylee Martin, and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.